Safari. Friday, February 5th. Status bar item.
Welcome to Understanding the IPCC number 7.
Camera. Take live 0 timer. Live viewfinder. Live time. Camera chooser. Back. Camera choose 0 people.
Hello, I'm Kerry Rutherford.
One face near top edge. Sent. Voiceover off.
Working Group 3, Mitigation of Climate Change. In exchange for freedom of inquiry, scientists are obliged to explain their work. If science is a closed priesthood, too difficult and arcane for the average person to understand, the dangers of abuse are greater. But if science is a topic of general interest and concern, if both its delights and its social consequences are discussed regularly and competently in schools, the press, and at the dinner table, we have greatly improved our prospects for learning how the world really is and for improving both it and us. That's my man Carl Sagan.
Voiceover on. Camera. Take picture. Button. 0 app switcher. One face near top edge. Safari.
Oops.
Meetup.com. Close active. 0. Safari. Toolbar. Back. Dimmed. Button. Share. Carl Sagan. Heading level 1.
World famous
Main.
astrophysicist,
Landmark.
astrobiologist, humanitarian, writer, all sorts of other stuff. You can see his information here. That quote is from his 1979 Pulitzer Prize winning book called Broca's Brain, in which basically, as he mentions in the introduction, he's attempting to disseminate information about science not being magic, it being stuff that we can use on a daily basis to make our lives better, and that's what I'm trying to do as well.
Image. Question mark. Public group.
So, my name's Kerry Rutherford. I have started a meetup group called Understanding the IPCC. That means the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You can see the information here. It's at meetup.com. All the links for this stuff will be in the comments if you're watching this video on YouTube. And the intention is, last Monday of every month, we meet to discuss understanding the IPCC.
Music Alive. Magazine website. Barefoot Finance.
So this
website.
is the business
Name.
I run in regards a talking
Actions
game.
available.
This location has links to
A talking game YouTube channel.
a YouTube
Visit
channel.
a talking barefoot music
I
alive.
also run
magazine
a
website.
publish live
Visited.
music
Link.
magazine called Music Alive.
Actions of a talking
In
game
any event,
YouTube channel.
the YouTube channel,
Visited. Link.
if you have not seen any of these
Actions
videos
available.
before, I strongly recommend you turn this one off. I mean, don't turn it off yet. And go to
Action
the
menu.
A Talking Game
Button.
YouTube channel, which again, linked in the comments.
4 months ago. Bullet. 8 months ago.
Where is it?
Bullet. 208 views. What they say.
Oh, that's
200
number 2.
Bullet. 8 months ago. Action menu. Action 8 months ago. Bullet. 208 views. What action menu? 8 months ago. Bullet. 55 views. Who they are.
That
Number 1. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and their 2018 synthesis report by a talking game 8 months ago. 1 hour, 7 minutes 55 views. Heading level
So
3.
number 1, because in that, and in number 2 as well, the one just below that, I explain the foundations for these videos, the foundations of the IPCC, who they are and what they have to say. I explain why I'm wearing sunglasses and why my iPad's talking to me, all that stuff. Foundational stuff goes on in the first 2 videos. I don't go into all this stuff during every video because they're already painfully long as it is and I can't afford the time, and you would hate me if I did. So I'd like you to consider that as a possibility. And of course there's also number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 preceding this one. They're all there.
Black_beauty. Black_beauty. Cenozoic gallery. Ling. End. Exhibits. App switcher. Books. Active. Books.
So what I've done,
Books. Page 4 of 56.
oops. Because this video, if I just did it in one piece, would be 5.5 hours long. Yep. I've divided it into 4 to make it more manageable. And so we're looking at the first one today. And there's 2 parts that go on here.
Consideration of risk perception, the scientific understanding of climate change, executive summary. 2. Bookmark, search. Book 2. Executive summary.
Oops, this is the wrong spot. Look at that.
Apps with camera. Active. Files. Safari. Books.
Books.
Active. Book.
That's where I'm supposed to be.
Book. Library.
I know what I'm supposed to do.
Library. 3 social. Page 2. Page 3. 15 national ants. Page 4. New. Errata. Fact. Front. New. SPM summary.
Well, you know what? Since we're here, so these are
page 4, page 3 of 6.
all these
14
documents
regional,
are chapters of the report, which I have downloaded from the
14% finished.
From the IPCC's website, which I'll show you later. All of these documents are theirs. Again, this is not my information, it's theirs. As you can see, there's a lot of it. This is why the video ends up being so long, because there's over 20 chapters here, and I have to summarize it in some way.
New fact sheet, front matter, new index, SPM summary, TS technique, WG3 mitigation index.
This one.
Toolbar.
So because, well, I'll let you in on the secret, I'm legally blind, which is why the sunglasses. And so accessibility is important to me, as is usability. So because this information is so lengthy and there's so much of it, I've created an index page to give you a hint of what's upcoming and when it's coming. So there's 2 parts here. One is the accessibility means I'm making everything hearable, both for future podcast situations and also so people can access this without being able to see the screen. Pardon me. However, that makes the videos very long. So the visual element is obviously there to be used by people who can use the visual element, like this index.
-40 assesses literature. The working group AR5 Climate Change 2014 Mitigation of Climate Change.
That's the report we're dealing with today. And
the working group 3 assesses literature on the site. -40 pages. 15/page. 15 chapters. 4 parts.
So there's 40 pages in total. As it says, 8:15 per page means that since every page will be read, it takes about 8.25 minutes on average to read through the pages each. So 15 chapters, those are just to allow access. So what this does is that you can, I would recommend perhaps taking a screenshot of this image off your, off of whatever device you're using, so that you can refer to this later if you're in the middle of the 10th chapter and you want to move on to the next. In that regard, I will point out that, as usual, I'm not just going through the chapters in order. Previously, I did them alphabetically, but this time I'm not doing that as well. In this case, because a lot of them are fairly abstract and some are more concrete, I decided to alternate those so that listeners and readers would basically be less bored. You get to move from the concrete of industry or buildings to something less concrete like policy making and stuff. So, and also to keep the lengths of each section, each part, about the same. They're about an hour and a half, give or take. I haven't timed them yet. Once I've done this video, I will go through and get actual timings for part A, B, C, and D, and for the individual chapters within each part, so that you'll know exactly, at 49 minutes, say, chapter 10 starts. And so if you want to read about whatever that is about, you can go there. Having said that, I am going to go through each page and let the text reader read it, so that viewers who need that will get what they need.
AR5 Climate Change 2014 Mitigation of Climate Change. The Working Group 3 Contribution to the IPCC's 5th Assessment Report, AR5, assesses literature on the scientific, technological, environmental, Economic and social aspects of mitigation of climate change since 2007, when the fourth assessment report, AR4, was released. -40 pages. 15/page. 15 chapters. 4 parts. Part A 9 PGS. Chapter 2 Integrated Risk and Uncertainty Assessment of Climate Change Response Policies 3 PGS. Chapter 12 Human Settlements, Infrastructure and Spatial Planning 3 PGS. Chapter 3 Social, Economic and Ethical Concepts and Methods 3 PGS. Part B 9 PGS. Chapter 11 Agriculture, Forestry and Other Land Use, AFOLU, 2 PGS. Chapter 4 Sustainable Development and Equity 2 PGS. Chapter 10 Industry 2 PGS. Chapter 5 Drivers, Trends and Mitigation 3 PGS. Part C 12 PGS. Chapter 9 Buildings 3 PGS. Chapter 6 Assessing Transformation Pathways 3 PGS. Chapter 8 Transport 3 PGS. Chapter 13 International Cooperation, Agreements and Instruments 3 PGS. Part D 10 PGS. Chapter 7 Energy Systems 3 PGS. Chapter 14 Regional Development and Cooperation 3 PGS. Chapter 15 National and Subnational Policies and Institutions 3 PGS. Chapter 16 Cross-Cutting Investment and Finance Issues 1 PGS.
So if you're just listening to this presentation, you might want to back that up and take notes on that index page so you also will know when stuff is happening and where. It's entirely up to you, of course. And as I said, if you're watching this, you may want to take a screenshot, because in 45 minutes, you probably won't remember what's coming last. That's not what I want to do.
Mail. Assesses literature on the scientific, Ipswich, camera. Files, camera. File, Safari, books,
That's what I
active
want.
books. Assesses book, tape library, button. WG3 Mitigation Index. New. In page 5, page 4 of 14 Regional Development and Co-op, page 2 of 6. 7 Energy, 4, 3, 2 Integrated. Toolbar. Page 4 of 56.
As I said, I will use these chapters in a manner that the reader can use them effectively, but also that a listener will not get lost, because I can assure you, going through this stuff with your eyes closed, it's easy to lose track of where you are. So I'll always make use of any page-based coding to let you know what's going on. For example,
2. The Scientific Executive Summary. 2.
Chapter 2.
Executive Summary. The scientific understanding of climate change and the impact it has on different levels of decision-making and policy options has increased since the publication of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, Fourth Assessment Report, AR4. In addition, there is a growing recognition that decision-makers often rely on intuitive thinking processes rather than undertaking a systematic analysis of options in a deliberative fashion. It is appropriate that climate change risk management strategies take into account both forms of thinking when considering policy choices where there is risk and uncertainty. Consideration of risk perception and decision processes can improve risk communication, leading to more effective policies for dealing with climate change by understanding the size, thematic biases that individuals utilize in dealing with climate change problems. One can more effectively communicate the nature of the climate change risk. An understanding of the simplified decision rules employed by decision makers in making choices may be helpful in designing policies that encourage the adoption of mitigation and adaptation measures. Section 2.4. Decision processes often include both deliberative and intuitive thinking when making mitigation and adaptation choices. Decision makers sometimes calculate the costs and benefits of their alternatives, deliberative thinking. They are also likely to utilize emotion and rule-based responses that are conditioned by personal past experience, social context, and cultural factors. Intuitive thinking. 2.4.2. Laypersons tend to judge risks differently than experts. Laypersons' perceptions of climate change risks and uncertainties are often influenced by past experience, as well as by emotional processes that characterize intuitive thinking. This may lead them to overestimate or underestimate the risk. Experts engage in more deliberative thinking than laypersons by utilizing scientific data to estimate the likelihood and consequences of climate change. 2, 4, 6. Cost-benefit analysis (CBA) and cost-effectiveness analysis (C) can enable decision-makers to examine costs and benefits. But these methodologies also have their limitations. Both approaches highlight the importance of considering the likelihood of events over time and the importance of focusing on long-term horizons when evaluating climate change mitigation and adaptation policies. CBA enables governments and other collective decision-making units to compare the social costs and benefits of different alternatives. However, CBA cannot deal well with infinite negative, expected utilities arising from low-probability catastrophic events often referred to as fat tails. C can generate cost estimates for stabilizing greenhouse gas (GHG) concentrations without having to take into account the uncertainties associated with cost estimates for climate change impacts. The limitation of C is that it takes the long-term stabilization as a given without considering the economic efficiency of the target level. 2, 5, 3. Formalized expert judgment and elicitation processes improve the characterization of uncertainty for designing climate change strategies. High confidence. Experts can quantify uncertainty through formal elicitation processes. Their judgments can characterize the uncertainties associated with a risk but not reduce them. The expert judgment process highlights the importance of undertaking more detailed analyses to design prudent climate policies. 2, 5, 6. Individuals and organizations that link science with policy grapple with several different forms of uncertainty. These uncertainties include absence of prior agreement on framing of problems and ways to scientifically investigate them, paradigmatic uncertainty, lack of information or knowledge for characterizing phenomena, epistemic uncertainty, and incomplete or conflicting scientific findings, translational uncertainty. 2, 6, 2. The social benefit from investments in mitigation tends to increase when uncertainty in the factors relating GHG emissions to climate change impacts are considered. Medium confidence. If one sets a global mean temperature (GMT) target, then normative analyses that include uncertainty on the climate response to elevated GHG concentration suggest that investments in mitigation measures should be accelerated. Under the assumption of nonlinear impacts of a GMT rise, inclusion of uncertainty along the causal chain from emissions to impacts suggests enhancing mitigation. 2, 6. The desirability of climate policies and instruments are affected by decision makers' responses to key uncertainties at the national level. Uncertainties in market behavior and future regulatory actions have been shown to impact the performance of policy instruments designed to influence investment patterns. Both modeling and empirical studies have shown that uncertainty as to future regulatory and market conditions adversely affects the performance of emission allowance trading markets. 2.6.5.1. Other formalized individuals and organizations as a given with cost-benefit analysis, layperson, cost-benefit as a given, formalized expert judge, individuals and the social benefit from investments in the desirability of decision makers in developing countries the desirability of climate policies and instruments are affected by decision makers' responses to key uncertainties at the national level. Uncertainties in market behavior and future regulatory actions have been shown to impact the performance of policy instruments designed to influence investment patterns. Both modeling and empirical studies have shown that uncertainty as to future regulatory and market conditions adversely affects the performance of emission allowance trading markets. 2.6.5.1. Other studies have shown that subsidy programs, e.g., feed-in tariffs, tax credits, are relatively immune to market uncertainties. But that uncertainties with respect to the duration and level of the subsidy program can have adverse effects. 2.6.5.2. In both cases, the adverse effects of uncertainty include less investment in low-carbon infrastructure, increasing consumer prices, and reducing the pressure for technological development. Decision makers in developing countries often face a particular set of challenges associated with implementing mitigation policies under risk and uncertainty, medium confidence. Managing risk and uncertainty in the context of climate policy is of particular importance to developing countries that are resource-constrained and face other pressing development goals. In addition, institutional capacity in these countries may be less developed compared to advanced economies. Therefore, decision makers in these countries, governments and economic agents such as firms, farmers, households, to name a Integrated Risk and Uncertainty Assessment of Climate Change Response Policies Chapter 2. 154. Chapter 2 Integrated Risk and Uncertainty Assessment of Climate Change Response Policies. Few have less room for error, uncertain outcomes and or wrong or poorly implemented policies. The same applies to national, regional and local governments in developed countries who can ill afford to waste scarce resources through policy errors. Box 2.1.
So,
Library button. Library. Two integrated risk. Page 2 of 6 assessing transfer. Page 3. 14 region. 13. 12 human settlement. Toolbar.
If you want a lengthy explanation of the order of these chapters,
toolbar. Page chooser.
You can send
page 7. Adjustable.
7. Really? Oh.
Page 6. Page 5.
You can send me an email and I will tell you.
Camera. Files. Camera. Files. Figure underscore.
So what I've done, as I did in the previous set of videos, is I am going to actually show figures because I'm using. Anyways, because they provide images with these chapters, I will actually show them. I can't see them.
Figure underscore 2. Done. List. Done. List. Gotcha. Figure underscore 2.2.
But I can show them to you.
Gotcha.
And if you want to take a lengthy look at these, pause the video, get yourself a glass of wine and admire its artistic merits.
Figure underscore 2.2. A chart with text and numbers on it.
Look at that.
Possible text.
A chart.
Scale of.
The scale of.
Action.
A chart with text and numbers on it.
Nation.
In any event, I will be scattering these images in there. Hopefully they're of benefit.
Camera.
Books.
Active. Books. The shift from Chapter 12. Human settlements, infrastructure, and spatial planning. Executive summary. Human settlements, infrastructure. So the premise is that hopefully this is a little less abstract than the other surrounding two chapters. You can decide that for yourself. The shift from rural to more urban societies is a global trend with significant consequences for greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions and climate change mitigation. Across multiple dimensions, the scale and speed of urbanization is unprecedented. More than half of the world population live in urban areas, and each week the global urban population increases by 1.3 million. Today there are nearly 1,000 urban agglomerations with populations of 500,000 or greater. By 2050, the global urban population is expected to increase by between 2.5 to 3 billion. Corresponding to 64% to 69% of the world population. Robust evidence. High agreement. Expansion of urban areas is on average twice as fast as urban population growth. And the expected increase in urban land cover during the first 3 decades of the 21st century will be greater than the cumulative urban expansion in all of human history. Medium evidence. High agreement. Urban areas generate around 80% of global gross domestic product, GDP. Medium evidence. Medium agreement. Urbanization is associated with increases in income, and higher urban incomes are correlated with higher consumption of energy use and GHG emissions. Medium evidence. High agreement. Sections 12.1, 12.2, 12.3.
It's kind of gratifying in a petty kind of way to know that urban sprawl doesn't just affect the city I live in.
Current and future urbanization trends are significantly different from the past. Robust evidence. High agreement. Urbanization is taking place at lower levels of economic development, and the majority of future urban population growth will take place in small to medium-sized urban areas in developing countries. Expansion of urban areas is on average twice as fast as urban population growth. And the expected increase in urban land cover during the first 3 decades of the 21st century will be greater than the cumulative urban expansion in all of human history. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.1, 12.2. Urban areas account for between 71% and 76% of CO2 emissions from global final energy use and between 67-76% of global energy use. Medium evidence. Medium agreement. There are very few studies that have examined the contribution of all urban areas to global GHG emissions. The fraction of global CO2 emissions from urban areas depends on the spatial and functional boundary definitions of urban and the choice of emissions accounting method. Estimates for urban energy-related CO2 emissions ranged from 71% for 2006 to between 53% and 87%. Central estimate, 76%, of CO2 emissions from global final energy use. Medium evidence. Medium agreement. There is only one attempt in the literature that examines the total GHG, CO2, CH4, N2O and SF6 contribution of urban areas globally, estimated at between 37% and 49% of global GHG emissions for the year 2000. Using Scope 1 accounting, urban share of global CO2 emissions is about 44%. Limited evidence. Medium agreement. 12.2. No single factor explains variations in per capita emissions across cities, and there are significant differences in per capita GHG emissions between cities within a single country. Robust evidence. High agreement. Urban GHG emissions are influenced by a variety of physical, economic and social factors, development levels, and urbanization histories specific to each city. Key influences on urban GHG emissions include income, population dynamics, urban form, locational factors, economic structure, and market failures. There is a prevalence for cities in annexi countries to have lower per capita final energy use and GHG emissions than national averages, and for per capita final energy use and GHG emissions of cities in non-annexi countries tend to be higher than national averages. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.3.
I'll point out Annex I, which is I think Annex 1, is related to development, and in a different report they did actually go into the annex levels. They don't in this report, and I don't remember, so I can't go ahead and make something up. It's especially confusing since they call some of their chapters annexes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are nothing to do with the annex urban places that they're making reference to, just to be clear.
The anticipated growth in urban population will require a massive build-up of urban infrastructure, which is a key driver of emissions across multiple sectors. Limited evidence. High agreement. If the global population increases to 9.3 billion by 2050 and developing countries expand their built environment and infrastructure to current global average levels using available technology of today, the production of infrastructure materials alone would generate approximately 470 GT of CO2 emissions. Currently, average per capita CO2 emissions embodied in the infrastructure of industrialized countries is 5 times larger than those in developing countries. The continued expansion of fossil fuel-based infrastructure would produce cumulative emissions of 2,986 to 7,402 gigatons CO2 during the remainder of the 21st century. Limited evidence. High agreement. 12.2, 12.3. The existing infrastructure stock of the average annexi resident is 3 times that of the world average and about 5 times higher than that of the average non-annexi resident. Medium evidence. Medium agreement. The long life of infrastructure and the built environment make them particularly prone to lock-in of energy and emissions pathways, lifestyles and consumption patterns that are difficult to change. The committed emissions from energy and transportation infrastructures are especially high, with respective ranges of 127-336 and 63-132 GT, respectively. Medium evidence. Medium agreement. 12.3, 12.4. Infrastructure and urban form are strongly linked, especially among transportation infrastructure provision, travel demand and vehicle kilometers traveled, robust evidence, high agreement. In developing countries in particular, the growth of transport infrastructure and ensuing urban forms will play important roles in affecting long-run emissions trajectories. Urban form and structure significantly affect direct operational, and indirect, embodied, GHG emissions, and are strongly linked to the throughput of materials and energy in a city, the wastes that it generates, and system efficiencies of a city, robust evidence, high agreement, 12.4, 12.5. Key urban form drivers of energy and GHG emissions are density, land use mix, connectivity, and accessibility, medium EV dense, high agreement. These factors are interrelated and interdependent. Pursuing one of them in isolation is insufficient for lower emissions. Connectivity and accessibility are tightly related. Highly connected places are accessible, while individual measures of urban form, 927, 12, have relatively small effects on vehicle miles traveled. They become more effective when combined. There is consistent evidence that co-locating higher residential densities with higher employment densities, coupled with significant public transit improvements, higher land use mixes, and other supportive demand management measures can lead to greater emission savings in the long run. Highly accessible communities are typically characterized by low daily commuting distances and travel times, enabled by multiple modes of transportation, robust evidence, high agreement, 12.5.
Well, it occurs to me in my collapse of pedagogy, sorry about that
App switcher, books, doc, file, books, file, Safari, camera, caps, files,
normally
files, done.
I give you a break every 20 minutes or so.
List, figure underscore 2.2.
I also missed out on
heading.
a couple of figures. So I'm going to pause right here because I should have taken a break after the first chapter, and I'm going to recommend, if you haven't got yourself a cup of tea or coffee or juice or water or air, whatever you want, there's a lot of information here, and you're just sitting listening and or watching a little paragraph swim around. As soon as I pause this, that being you pause this, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the figures for chapter 2, which I forgot, and the first two figures of chapter 12, which is where we are now. So pause, unpause, okay.
Done, list, button. Figure underscore 2.3, PNG image, done, button.
And I hope these are useful. I have no idea, of course.
Figure underscore 2.3. A graph with multicolored lines and text on a white background.
It's a graph with multicolored lines. Like, that's got to be a good thing, right?
Done. List. Button.
Yeah, it does.
Figure underscore 2.4. Figure underscore 3 point. Figure underscore 2.4.
There we are.
PNG. Done. Button.
What's this one
Figure
look
underscore
like?
2.4. A screenshot of a graph with multicolored lines and text. Possible text. 1.
Wow. 1. It's very informative. At least it tells me it's a multicolored bar. Anyway.
Done. List. Button.
Now, since we're in chapter 12...
dismiss pop-up.
Nope.
Vertical scroll bar.
Nope.
Rows. Figure underscore. Rows 20. Rows 30. Rows 40. Figure underscore 13. Figure underscore 12.20. Figure underscore 11.20. Figure underscore 12.1. PNG.
Don't worry, I'm not going to show you 20 images
Button.
from chapter 12. What I do is, if it's less than 24 images, for reasons that I alone contain, I'll show you 4. If there's more, I'll show you 6. In this case...
Button. List. Button. Figure underscore 3.1, rows 12, rows 23, rows 34, figure underscore 11 dot, figure underscore 11, figure underscore 11 dot, figure underscore 12.1, figure underscore 12.2, PNG. Done. Button.
In this case, You're getting 4 images from this chapter.
Figure underscore 12.2. A multicolored graph with text and numbers.
Oh, look at that. Achoo! Pardon me. Don't worry, you can't get COVID from a video. So don't, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not wearing a mask, sorry, but I'm in a video. Which is why it's a video.
App switcher. Safari. Camera. Cameras. Books. Active. Books. Have relative 12. Have relatively small effects on vehicle miles traveled 12. Have urban mitigation options vary. Have relatively small. Urban mitigation options vary across urbanization trajectories and are expected to be most effective when policy instruments are bundled. Robust evidence. High agreement. For rapidly developing cities, options include shaping their urbanization and infrastructure development towards more sustainable and low-carbon pathways. In mature or established cities, options are constrained by existing urban forms and infrastructure and the potential for refurbishing existing systems and infrastructures. Key mitigation strategies include co-locating high residential with high employment densities, achieving high land use mixes, increasing accessibility and investing in public transit and other supportive demand management measures. Bundling these strategies can reduce emissions in the short term and generate even higher emission savings in the long term. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.5. Successful implementation of mitigation strategies at local scales requires that there be in place the institutional capacity and political will to align the right policy instruments to specific spatial planning strategies. Robust evidence. High agreement. Integrated land use and transportation planning provides the opportunity to envision and articulate future settlement patterns, backed by zoning ordinances, subdivision regulations, and capital improvements programs to implement the vision. While smaller scale spatial planning may not have the energy conservation or emissions reduction benefits of larger scale ones, development tends to occur parcel by parcel, and urbanized areas are ultimately the products of thousands of individual site-level development and design decisions. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.5, 12.6. The largest opportunities for future urban GHG emissions reduction are in rapidly urbanizing areas where urban form and infrastructure are not locked in, but where there are often limited governance, technical, financial, and institutional capacities. Robust evidence. High agreement. The bulk of future infrastructure and urban growth is expected in small to medium-sized cities in developing countries, where these capacities are often limited or weak. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.4, 12.5, 12.6. Thousands of cities are undertaking climate action plans, but their aggregate impact on urban emissions is uncertain. Robust evidence. High agreement. Local governments and institutions possess unique opportunities to engage in urban mitigation activities, and local mitigation efforts have expanded rapidly. However, there has been little systematic assessment regarding the overall extent to which cities are implementing mitigation policies and emission reduction targets are being achieved, or emissions reduced. Climate action plans include a range of measures across sectors, largely focused on energy efficiency rather than broader land use planning strategies and cross-sectoral measures to reduce sprawl and promote transit-oriented development. The majority of these targets have been developed for annexi countries and reflect neither their mitigation potential nor implementation. Few targets have been established for non-annexi country cities, and it is in these places where reliable city-level GHG emissions inventory may not exist. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.6. The feasibility of spatial planning instruments for climate change mitigation is highly dependent on a city's financial and governance capability. Robust evidence. High agreement. Drivers of urban GHG emissions are interrelated and can be addressed by a number of regulatory, management, and market-based instruments. Many of these instruments are applicable to cities in both developed and developing countries, but the degree to which they can be implemented varies. In addition, each instrument varies in its potential to generate public revenues or require government expenditures, and the administrative scale at which it can be applied. A bundling of instruments and a high level of coordination across institutions can increase the likelihood of achieving emissions reductions and avoiding unintended outcomes. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.6. For designing and implementing climate policies effectively, institutional arrangements, governance mechanisms, and financial resources should be aligned with the goals of reducing urban GHG emissions. Robust evidence. High agreement. These goals will reflect the specific challenges facing individual cities and local governments. The following have been identified as key factors. 1. Institutional arrangements that facilitate the integration of mitigation with other high-priority urban agendas. 2. A multi-level governance context that empowers cities to promote urban transformations. 3. Spatial planning competencies and political will to support integrated land use and transportation planning. And 4. Sufficient financial flows and incentives to adequately support mitigation strategies. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.6. Successful implementation of urban climate change Successful implementation of urban climate change mitigation strategies can provide co-benefits. Robust evidence. High agreement. Urban areas throughout the world continue to struggle with challenges, including ensuring access to energy, limiting air and water pollution, and maintaining employment opportunities and competitiveness. Action on urban scale mitigation often depends on the ability to relate climate change mitigation efforts to local co-benefits. The co-benefits of local climate change mitigation can include public savings, air quality and associated health benefits, and productivity increases in urban centers, providing additional motivation for undertaking mitigation activities. Robust evidence. High agreement. 12.5, 12.6, 12.7, 12.8. Human settlements, infrastructure, and spatial planning. Chapter 12. 928. Chapter 12. Human settlements, infrastructure, and spatial planning. This assessment highlights a number of key knowledge gaps. Human
Well, look at
settlements,
that.
infrastructure, and spatial
All right.
planning. App switcher.
Figures.
Safari. Camera. Files. File. Figure files. Done. Button. Done. List. Button. Dismiss pop-up. Figure underscore 2.4. Rows 46 to 50. Rows 30. Figure underscore 11 dot. Figure underscore 11. Figure underscore 12.2. Figure underscore 12.22. PNG. Done. Button. Figure underscore 12.22. A bar graph with blue and yellow bars on a white background.
Oh, colors. I like bar graphs.
Done. List. Button.
I just wish this thing would stay up at the
Figure
top.
underscore 2.1. Figure underscore 2. Rows 12. Rows 20. Rows 34. Figure underscore 11. Figure underscore 12.1. Figure underscore 12.22. Figure underscore 12.23. PNG. Done. Button.
What's this?
Figure underscore 12.23. An illustration of a map with text.
Wow, maps. I like maps too. So, as I mentioned, I forgot to give you a break before.
Safari, camera, books.
Just
active,
as you were happy in
books,
school when the teacher said,
books,
recess is
page,
over, now it's time for a break.
78. Table of library.
It's kind of how it's going here.
Library. 10 industry. Page 1 of 6. 2 integrated. 3 social. Econ. Toolbar. Toolbar. Page chooser. Page 7. Adjustable. Page 6. Page 5. This framing. Executive summary. Ethics involves questions of just app switcher. Safari. Camera. Active. Camera. View. Zip camera. Take picture. Viewfinder. Live photo. Timer. Camera chooser. Back facing. Camera choose. 0 people.
Hello again. I'm not going to turn off the voiceover this time.
One face near top right
I'm going to
edge.
make use of my opportunity to promote local science. The Royal Tyrrell Museum of
0
Paleontology,
people.
located in Drumheller, Alberta. It's
One app switch. Files. Safari. Safari.
the most
Skip to
amazing
main content.
museum
Page
I've ever
name.
been in, and I've been in a few.
RTMP from home. Heading level 2. Exhibits. Heading level
This
2.
is their website.
Exhibits. Navigation.
Obviously, given
Landmark.
COVID, etc., there's been lots more virtual stuff happening, but this is a remarkable place. Again, I'm showing you this not because this has anything to do with what we're talking about. This is your commercial break. This is your chance to have a cookie or a smoke or a run. Maybe you can go for a run. You can stop this and go feed your cat, bathe your goldfish. That's kind of weird. Anyway, this museum has got both,
image,
you
article,
know,
landmark,
millions of year old skeletons and
a white screen with blue
virtual
and green text,
on
text,
hands-on presentations, and
shale.
I've been there many times with my daughter, and it is astonishing and never tiring and never
Valentine card, link,
dusty and
image,
old.
download, link is external, Coelodonta. Woolly rhinoceros.
A woolly rhinoceros.
Woolly rhinoceros.
Man, I wish I could see this. That must look pretty cool. In any event, so this is my promote local moment. Before it was arts, now it's science. I don't know what I'll do next time. And now, hope you really had your break. They got some really neat videos. Anyways, I strongly recommend it, as I already have done. I'm going to sneeze again. Oh boy. Pardon me. Okay, and I don't actually have COVID, I promise. Books.
App switcher. Books. Books. App books. The significant. Page 5 of 76. More directly. Mitigation is a public economic. Chapter 3. Social, economic, and ethical concepts and methods. Chapter 3.
So I just want to point out,
social,
that's the name of the chapter.
And ethical concepts and methods.
So, more abstract than the previous one. You might say not much, but I'm doing what I can, all right?
Executive summary. This framing chapter describes the strengths and limitations of the most widely used concepts and methods in economics, ethics, and other social sciences that are relevant to climate change. It also provides a reference resource for the other chapters in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, Fifth Assessment Report, AR5, as well as for decision makers.
Let's hear it for decision makers.
The significance of the social dimension and the role of ethics and economics is underscored by Article 2 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which indicates that an ultimate objective of the convention is to avoid dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Two main issues confronting society and the IPCC are what constitutes dangerous interference with the climate system and how to deal with that interference. Determining what is dangerous is not a matter for natural science alone, it also involves value judgments, a subject matter of the theory of value, which is treated in several disciplines, including ethics, economics, and other social sciences. Ethics involves questions of justice and value. Justice is concerned with equity and fairness, and, in general, with the rights to which people are entitled. Value is a matter of worth, benefit, or good. Value can sometimes be measured quantitatively, for instance, through a social welfare function or an index of human development. Economic tools and methods can be used in assessing the positive and negative values that result from particular decisions, policies, and measures. They can also be essential in determining the mitigation and adaptation actions to be undertaken as public policy, as well as the consequences of different mitigation and adaptation strategies. Economic tools and methods have strengths and limitations, both of which are detailed in this chapter. Economic tools can be useful in designing climate change mitigation policies. Very high confidence. While the limitations of economics and social welfare analysis, including cost-benefit analysis, are widely documented, economics nevertheless provides useful tools for assessing the pros and cons of taking, or not taking, action on climate change mitigation, as well as of adaptation measures, in achieving competing societal goals. Understanding these pros and cons can help in making policy decisions on climate change mitigation and can influence the actions taken by countries, institutions and individuals. Section 3.2. Mitigation is a public good, climate change is a case of the tragedy of the commons, high confidence. Effective climate change mitigation will not be achieved if each agent, individual, institution or country, acts independently in its own selfish interest, suggesting the need for collective action. Some adaptation actions, on the other hand, have characteristics of a private good as benefits of actions may accrue more directly to the individuals, regions, or countries that undertake them, at least in the short term. Nevertheless, financing such adaptive activities remains an issue, particularly for poor individuals and countries. 3.1, 3.2. Analysis contained in the literature of moral and political philosophy can contribute to resolving ethical questions that are raised by climate change. Medium confidence. These questions include how much overall climate mitigation is needed to avoid dangerous interference, how the effort or cost of mitigating climate change should be shared among countries and between the present and future, how to account for such factors as historical responsibility for emissions, and how to choose among alternative policies for mitigation and adaptation. Ethical issues of well-being, justice, fairness, and rights are all involved. 3.2, 3.3, 3. Duties to pay for some climate damages can be grounded in compensatory justice and distributive justice. Medium confidence. If compensatory duties to pay for climate damages and adaptation costs are not due from agents who have acted blamelessly, then principles of compensatory justice will apply to only some of the harmful emissions. 3.3.5. This finding is also reflected in the predominant global legal practice of attributing liability for harmful emissions. 3.3.6. Duties to pay for climate damages can, however, also be grounded in distributive justice. 3.3.4.3.3.5. Distributional weights may be advisable in cost-benefit analysis. Medium confidence. Ethical theories of value commonly imply that distributional weights should be applied to monetary measures of benefits and harms when they are aggregated to derive ethical conclusions. 3.6.1. Such weighting contrasts with much of the practice of cost-benefit analysis. The use of a temporal discount rate has a crucial impact on the evaluation of mitigation policies and measures. The social discount rate is the minimum rate of expected social return that compensates for the increased intergenerational inequalities and the potential increased collective risk that an action generates. Even with disagreement on the level of the discount rate, a consensus favors using declining risk-free discount rates over longer time horizons. High confidence. 3.6.2. An appropriate social risk-free discount rate for consumption is between 1 and 3 times the anticipated growth rate in real per capita consumption. Medium confidence. This judgment is based on an application of the Ramsey rule using typical values in the literature of normative parameters in the rule. Ultimately, however, these are normative choices. 3.6.2. Co-benefits may complement the direct benefits of mitigation. Medium confidence. While some direct benefits of mitigation are reductions in adverse climate change impacts, co-benefits can include a broad range of environmental, economic, and social effects, such as 3.211. Social, economic, and ethical concepts and methods. Chapter 3. Reductions in local air pollution, less acid rain, and increased energy security. However, whether co-benefits are net positive or negative in terms of well-being welfare, can be difficult to determine because of interaction between climate policies and pre-existing non-climate policies. The same results apply to adverse side effects. 3.6.3. Particularly if the damage from extreme climate change increases more rapidly than the probability of such change declines. This is important in economic analysis, where the expected benefit of mitigation may be traded off against mitigation costs. 3.9.2. Impacts from climate change are both market and non-market. Market effects where market prices and quantities are observed include impacts of storm damage on infrastructure, tourism, and increased energy demand. Non-market effects include many ecological impacts, as well as changed cultural values, none of which are generally captured through market prices. The economic measure of the value of either kind of impact is willingness to pay to avoid damage, which can be estimated using methods of revealed preference and stated preference. 3.9. Substitutability reduces the size of damages from climate change, high confidence. The monetary damage from a change in the climate will be lower if individuals can easily substitute for what is damaged, compared to cases where such substitution is more difficult. 3.9. Damaged functions in existing integrated negative exchange rates tax distort negative damaged substitutability reduces the
It
size of
occurs to me,
damages from climate change. App switcher camera files figure under
I forgot the
figure under
first
files
figures.
done button
Let's do this.
figure done list button figure underscore 3.1 PNG image done button figure underscore 3.1 a graph with red lines on a white background. Possible text lesser increase in greater equal increase well-being.
That's good.
Figure underscore 3.1
Okay.
app switcher Safari Tyrrell Museum.
And by the way,
you're
you're supposed to pause this video if you need to
Actions
when that
available.
visual is up. You want to go get your coffee refilled? Now's your chance. We're reaching the end here. So it'll be 10-15 minutes.
Camera books active
Books. And we were on dangerous, if I remember correctly.
Market effect substitute damaged functions in
Damaged.
existing integrated assessment models IAMs are of low reliability, high confidence. The economic assessments of damages from climate change is embodied in the damaged functions used by some existing IAMs, though not in the analysis embodied in WGIII, are highly stylized with a weak empirical foundation. The empirical literature on monetized impacts is growing but remains limited and often geographically narrow. This suggests that such damaged functions should be used with caution and that there may be significant value in undertaking research to improve the precision of damage estimates. 3.9, 3.12. Negative private costs of mitigation arise in some cases, although they are sometimes overstated in the literature. Medium confidence. Sometimes mitigation can lower the private costs of production and thus raise profits. For individuals, mitigation can raise well-being. Ex post evidence suggests that such negative cost opportunities do indeed exist but are sometimes overstated in engineering analyses. 3.9. Exchange rates between GHGs with different atmospheric lifetimes are very sensitive to the choice of emission metric. The choice of an emission metric depends on the potential application and involves explicit or implicit value judgments. No consensus surrounds the question of which metric is both conceptually best and practical to implement. High confidence. In terms of aggregate mitigation costs alone, the global warming potential GWP, with a 100-year time horizon, may perform similarly to selected other metrics, such as the time-dependent global temperature change potential or the global cost potential of reaching a prescribed climate target. However, various metrics may differ significantly in terms of the implied distribution of costs across sectors, regions, and over time. Limited evidence, medium agreement. 3.9. Tax distortions change the cost of all abatement policies. High confidence. A carbon tax or a tradable emissions permit system can exacerbate tax distortions, or, in some cases, alleviate them. Carbon tax or permit revenue can be used to moderate adverse effects by cutting other taxes. However, regulations that forego revenue, e.g., by giving permits away, implicitly have higher social costs because of the tax interaction effect. 3.6.3. Many different analytic methods are available for evaluating policies. Methods may be quantitative, for example, cost-benefit analysis, integrated assessment modeling, and multi-criteria analysis, or qualitative, for example, sociological and participatory approaches. However, no single best method can provide a comprehensive analysis of policies. A mix of methods is often needed to understand the broad effects, attributes, trade-offs, and complexities of policy choices. Moreover, policies often address multiple objectives. 3.7. Four main criteria are frequently used in evaluating and choosing a mitigation policy: medium confidence. They are cost-effectiveness and economic efficiency, excluding environmental benefits, but including transaction costs; environmental effectiveness, the extent to which the environmental targets are achieved; distributional effects, impact on different subgroups within society; and institutional feasibility, including political feasibility. 3.7.1. A broad range of policy instruments for climate change mitigation is available to policymakers. These include economic incentives, direct regulatory approaches, information programs, government provision, and voluntary actions. Interactions between policy instruments can enhance or reduce the effectiveness and cost of mitigation action. Economic incentives will generally be more cost-effective than direct regulatory interventions. However, the performance and suitability of policies depends on numerous conditions, including institutional capacity, the influence of rent seeking, and predictability or uncertainty about future policy settings. The enabling environment may differ between countries, including between low-income and high-income countries. These differences can have implications for the suitability and performance of policy instruments. 3.8. Impacts of extreme events may be more important economically than impacts of average climate change. High confidence. Risks associated with the entire probability distribution of outcomes in terms of climate response, WGI, and climate impacts, WGII, are relevant to the assessment of mitigation. Impacts from more extreme climate change may be more important economically, in terms of the expected value of impacts, than impacts of average climate change. 212. Chapter 3. Social, Economic, and Ethical Concepts and Methods. The behavior of energy users and producers exhibits a variety of anomalies. High confidence. Understanding climate change as a physical phenomenon with links to societal causes and impacts is a very complex process. To be fully effective, the conceptual frameworks and methodological tools used in mitigation assessments need to take into account cognitive limitations and other regarding preferences that frame the processes of economic decision-making by people and firms. 3.10. Perceived fairness can facilitate cooperation among individuals. High confidence. Experimental evidence suggests that reciprocal behavior and perceptions of fair outcomes and procedures facilitate voluntary cooperation among individual people in providing public goods. This finding may have implications for the design of international agreements to coordinate climate change mitigation. 3.10. Social institutions and culture can facilitate mitigation and adaptation. Medium confidence. Social institutions and culture can shape individual actions on mitigation and adaptation and be complementary to more conventional methods for inducing mitigation and adaptation. They can promote trust and reciprocity and contribute to the evolution of common rules. They also provide structures for acting collectively to deal with common challenges. 3.10. Technological change that reduces mitigation costs can be encouraged by institutions and economic incentives. High confidence. As pollution is not fully priced by the market, private individuals and firms lack incentives to invest sufficiently in the development and use of emissions-reducing technologies in the absence of appropriate policy interventions. Moreover, imperfect appropriability of the benefits of innovation further reduces incentives to develop new technologies. 3.11.
So, congratulations.
App Switcher. Safari, TyrrellMuseum.com and 3 other tabs. Safari.
Made it through
Download.
those
Link
chapters.
is external. Address.
Get rid of that.
Text field. Siri suggestions. Siri suggestions. Heading.
Why do we have Siri suggestions?
iWork folder. 3 apps. App Switcher. Files. Figure. Camera. Books. Camera. Book. Safari.
Life's an adventure, you know.
Safari. M1 Big Sur updating issues. Apple Community.
I'm not sure why that is open.
Button. M1 Big Sur update. Erased things. Button. Friday February. A talking game. Bookmarks menu. A talking gap. Selected. Bookmarks. Selected. Bookmark 2009. M1 Big Sur updating
I
issues.
guess you can't see
Apple
those.
Community.
However,
Tab opened on Korak. App files. Figure camera. Books. Active. Books.
I will point out
Books.
by
Library.
showing you
Button.
once again
Library. 3 social. Economic. Page 2 of 6. 7 energy system.
the index I
page 3
created.
15 national and drag. New. Annex new fact sheet.
See those
Front
annexes.
matter, new index. STS Technic WG3 Mitigation Index.
There.
Toolbar.
So I'll just
Page
remind you
1 of
visually,
1.
I'm not going to play through it again, but so you'll notice that there's part A, part B, part C, part D. I'm going to try to get these up once a week. So I should be done all 4 of them within the month. So this guide can be quite important for you because notice again the chapters, their order is based not on numbers or alphabet but on an internal decision-making thing I had which got modified a great deal. So I'm trying to alternate between concrete and abstract. And pardon me, last but not least,
App switcher. Files. Camera. Safari. Favorite. If you get a Safari. A talking game website. A talking game website. A talking game.
if you want to contact me, there's
403. A talking barefoot
an
freelance
email
website.
address and a phone
Music
number
Alive.
on this
Magazine
business page.
website. Visited.
I
Link.
welcome your commentary,
Actions available. App switch. Files. Camera. Active.
and I hope it's been useful to you.
View. Camera chooser. Back facing. 0 people.
Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next time.
One face near top edge.
One face near
top
top
right
edge.
edge.
Well, you know, that's not...
Face near top right edge.
Oh,
Near
right, I
top
gotta do
edge.
this.
App switcher. Camera. Where the screen recording in progress.